The Night the Woods Tried to Take Us. True Appalachian Mountain Horror Story. If you think the woods are just trees and trails, you've never stepped into the Appalachians after dark. These mountains breathe. They watch. They wait. Every lost hiker, every missing camper, every unexplained scream swallowed by the trees becomes part of them. Tonight, a true story that will make you fear the forest forever. What happened to them could happen to anyone. Subscribe while you still can. Ethan and his friends believed they knew the mountains well enough to treat them like a playground. They grew up in a small Appalachian town, surrounded by endless ridges and dark hollers that locals respected more than they enjoyed. The woods were part of their lives since childhood, but there were places their parents told them never to go, places where the land turned strange and the forest seemed to breathe. They ignored those old warnings on a late autumn evening, deciding to take a shortcut through the mountains after sunset. They carried only a single flashlight between them, confident the trail would guide their feet and their memories would fill the gaps. The Appalachian forests were ancient, older than the bones of the country around them, and sometimes they shifted when darkness came. Their steps took them farther than they expected, and the trees grew denser the deeper they walked. Trunks leaned inward like a crowd listening too closely, and the canopy blocked even the faintest traces of moonlight. It felt like a tunnel that swallowed direction and time. None of them wanted to admit it, but something about the forest changed when night took hold. Every twig snap carried weight. Every gust of wind felt more like breath than weather. Ethan tried to steady his heartbeat by focusing on the crunch of dried leaves beneath their boots. The woods listened back. The deeper they went, the quieter the world became. The usual night chorus of insects and owls faded until only their footsteps remained. Silence pressed around them like heavy hands. It was the kind of quiet that was not natural, a quiet that lived. A strange unease crept into Ethan's chest as they pushed forward. He tried to shake the feeling, blaming it on exhaustion and the encroaching dark. But the trail ahead was unfamiliar now, even though they followed what they believed was the correct direction. The roots in the ground twisted like fingers waiting to trip them. The air thickened as if the forest didn't want them there, as if every inch farther was a trespass. When the flashlight flickered, a long stretch of blackness swallowed the small circle of comfort they had relied on. Ethan noticed the trees no longer looked natural. Their limbs bent at sharp angles, splitting like broken bones. Some trunks twisted in unnatural spirals, bark torn in strips that exposed pale, raw wood beneath. Shapes knit into the darkness, barely distinguishable from shadow, but too structured to be illusion. The branches arched above them like ribs in a giant carcass. The forest felt like it was closing around them, sealing exits they never saw. The ground sloped downward unexpectedly, pushing them deeper without their consent. He tried to keep track of their route, but every turn looked identical, every set of trees familiar in a way that made no sense. They were walking in circles. The realization hit when they spotted a fallen log they had stepped over almost half an hour earlier. The air grew colder though the night was still. The trees pressed closer, branches almost touching their shoulders. Something was wrong with distance. Steps felt longer and shorter at the same time, as though the woods stretched and shrank around them based on what it wanted. Then came the smell. Rot thicker than soil alone. A sickly, sweet stench that clung to the back of their throats and hollowed their stomachs. Ethan glanced around for the source, but the smell moved with them, circling like a predator just beyond sight. Panic nipped at their confidence. They quickened their pace though they didn't know where they were going. Shadows shifted above them, and the flashlight flickered again. This time, the beam swung upward, catching a shape perched on a high branch. Its outline was too long, its limbs too many. The light cut out. The darkness felt solid, like a curtain dragged over their bodies. Ethan's breath caught as he tried to listen for anything to tell him they weren't alone. The roots beneath his boots pulsed, as if the earth itself breathed. His friends bumped into him in the dark, but they said nothing. The silence between them grew sharp with fear they couldn't voice. When the flashlight sputtered back to life, the shape was gone. But the branches above swayed though no wind touched them. The trail they thought they followed was gone. In its place stood a narrow corridor of trees, as though the woods rearranged themselves while they were blind. The forest guided them onward, and they had no choice but to obey. The path angled deeper into the mountain, leading them to rock faces protruding like jagged teeth. Moss dripped from stone in long green veils, slick and alive. Ethan felt watched, followed by something that understood these woods better than any person could. They stumbled into a clearing too suddenly, the ground flattening beneath them. For a moment, Ethan thought they found safety. The moon managed to pierce through the canopy here, but the light revealed something far worse than the dark. The clearing was not empty. Dozens of trees encircled it, their trunks carved with deep, violent gouges. Strange markings etched in spirals and crooked lines, symbols that unsettled the eye. Bones hung from branches, brittle and brown, clacking together in the breeze. Small animal skulls dangled like trophies. At the center lay a pit. Not a natural dip in the ground. A grave or something worse. Freshly dug, dark soil piled at its edges. Ethan's stomach twisted with a terror too large to swallow. The pit looked like it was waiting. The trees towered over it like witnesses, their branches angled inward, ready to lower at any moment. A sensation flooded the clearing, a pressure like a heartbeat rising from beneath the ground. The woods wanted something from them. The woods wanted them. The flashlight dimmed again, and the shadows around the clearing stretched, bending toward the pit. The forest creaked with a hunger that felt patient and ancient. Ethan's pulse hammered in his ears as his instincts screamed to run. But the woods were ready. They had led them here. The fear thickened until breathing hurt. Ethan realized too late that the stories passed down through generations weren't superstition. They were warnings. Warnings his group failed to respect. The woods were awake. Ethan felt the shift beneath his feet, as if the ground chose when to hold him or let go. Every instinct screamed they were now prey, trapped in a living maze with no exits left untouched. The trees seemed ready to swallow the clearing, eager to bury the evidence before daylight. They were running out of time, and the forest knew it. The clearing pulsed with silent intent, and Ethan sensed the woods closing in behind them. The trees formed a barrier too thick to move through, bark shifting in patterns that resembled grasping limbs. The air turned heavy, like the atmosphere before a violent storm, though the sky remained painfully clear above. His breath came shallow. Every muscle in his body knew what his mind refused to admit. The woods were alive, and they were not finished with them. His friends scanned the edges of the clearing, searching for anything resembling a path. But the forest had erased their trail, leaving nothing but enclosing walls of black wood. The pit at the center felt like the only destination the woods wanted them to acknowledge. The ground around it looked fragile, soil disturbed as though something had crawled into the earth rather than out of it. The deeper they stared, the deeper the pit seemed to go, a void disguised as a grave. The silence that had followed them only grew more oppressive. Even their own breathing sounded swallowed before fully leaving their lungs. The branches above clattered faintly, but the bones tied to them did not sway with wind. They twitched with purpose. The entire clearing was a ritual space. A trap set by something that knew humans wandered foolishly into places they were warned not to. A low vibration started beneath their feet, like a heartbeat swelling upward from the core of the mountain. The vibration grew stronger until Ethan could feel his teeth chatter. The soil at the edges of the pit began to shift, crumbling inward as though something beneath was pushing upward. Fear rooted him to the ground. The woods didn't just want to consume them physically. It craved their terror, their struggle, their realization that there was no escape. Ethan's rational mind fought for control, searching for explanations in geology or wildlife behavior. But there was no animal that could reshape an entire forest. No natural force created symbols carved with intent and hatred. Something ancient and deliberate was beneath the Appalachian surface, something that had outlived humans and watched them like prey. The heartbeat intensified, and the center of the pit bulged upward in a slow, horrifying rise. Soil split open as the shape underneath forced itself closer to the surface. Tubes of roots intertwined with whatever mass pushed upward, like veins delivering strength. Ethan stepped back, knees trembling so violently he feared they might give out. The woods made space around the pit, branches rising slightly as if giving their full attention to the emergence. This was not discovery. This was presentation. A mound surfaced, pulsing once, then splitting across the middle. Something pale inside glistened like wet stone. Dirt sloughed away, revealing a form wrapped in roots. The figure was human-shaped, but elongated unnaturally, limbs stretched too far, joints bent wrong. Its head lolled backward, mouth gaping open as soil poured from within like breath turned to earth. Dark holes where eyes should have been stared upward, unseen yet aware. The roots peeled away slowly as though savoring the reveal. The figure's skin looked pressed thin against bone, veins dark and swollen beneath. Ethan could not tell if it had ever been alive in a way humans understood. The soil beneath it shuddered again. A second mound rose near the first, then a third. The forest had been collecting bodies for a long time. These mountains hid secrets easier than they revealed them. The dead weren't buried here. They were planted. A shift in the ground suddenly cracked under Ethan's feet, and the earth dipped, nearly pulling him toward the pit. He stumbled back, regaining balance by sheer desperation. The forest responded with a groaning creak that sounded like approval. The branches leaned closer, bending like curious necks. The bones clattered in a soft rhythm, like clapping hands encouraging the inevitable. They needed to move. Any direction was dangerous, but standing still was surrender. Ethan scanned the clearing again, eyes adjusting to the moonlight just enough to see a break in the nearest line of trees. It was small, narrow, almost hidden, but it was there. The woods hadn't sealed completely. Maybe the forest wanted a chase. Maybe it wanted them to think escape was possible before taking their hope. Ethan's legs obeyed instinct before reason caught up. He launched himself toward the gap, trusting that movement was better than waiting for the earth to consume him. His friends followed in a desperate scramble, their footfalls loud and chaotic against the stillness. The forest reacted instantly. The bones above rattled in a frenzy, shaking violently as branches crashed together. The clearing shrieked without sound, fury vibrating through the ground. The path was barely more than a slit between trees, forcing them to push through splintering bark and hanging moss. Branches tore at their clothes and scraped skin raw. The woods fought every step they took, pulling back with hooks of twigs and thorns. The deeper they pushed, the more disoriented they became, but the instinct to flee outweighed all confusion. Their panic guided them through tight spaces and down steep slopes, driven by the knowledge that whatever crawled from the pit was not slow. Roots writhed beneath the soil, rising like traps set for ankles and knees. Ethan nearly fell twice, catching himself against trunks that felt too warm, too soft. The trees seemed to pulse. The air grew thick again, choking their lungs as if breathing was a privilege the forest allowed only when amused. The woods knew every move they would make before they made it. The silence broke, not with sound but with an absence, a sensation like reality thinning. Ethan realized he no longer heard the hurried breaths of his friends behind him. He turned, terrified to confirm what already hollowed his gut. The path behind him was empty. They were gone. The darkness had swallowed them without struggle, without scream. The forest ensured they disappeared silently, permanently. Alone now, Ethan pressed forward, driven by the hope that reaching the mountain's edge would break the influence the woods possessed. The trail began to widen slightly, and the trees grew thinner. He could smell cold air again, the scent of open space and escape. Relief trembled through him, small but enough to push faster. Then he saw the log. The same fallen log they had stepped over hours earlier. The forest had led him back to the beginning. It looped his struggle into its own amusement. Every effort, every inch, all wasted. The trees around him straightened, their branches stretching wide enough to block any forward path. The moonlight vanished again, swallowed by a canopy that snapped closed like a lid on a coffin. The woods had allowed him to run only to prove a point. The forest had taken his friends. Now it wanted him. The ground beneath him cracked again, the heartbeat now pounding directly into his bones. The earth split slowly, promising inevitable submission. He understood now why the missing were never found. The woods did not let go. It did not tolerate escape. It did not simply watch trespassers. It claimed them. The last thing Ethan saw before the darkness surged upward was the trees bending inward, celebrating the mountain's newest sacrifice. If you ever find yourself wandering the Appalachians after dark, remember this: the woods do not get lost, only people do. Trails shift, light dies, and the mountains always take what they are owed. If this true story left you afraid of what waits between the trees, make sure you subscribe for more real Appalachian horror. Because out there, someone else is already missing, and the woods are still hungry.